The Andy Pollin Show.
We got to go after this with everything we got, figuring they're going to come with everything they got.
I'll start off by saying I'm bored, I'm broke, and I'm back.
The Andy Pollin Show on ESPN 630 starts right now.
Oh, we got some combine stuff to get to. The wrap-up from the weekend and the interviews that took place with the three possible quarterbacks. One of them could wind up here. One of them very likely to wind up here in Washington when the draft takes place in April. We'll get to that. Also, I want to rant a little bit about the NBA with what happened yesterday in Boston. That's just ridiculous. You know, it's the end of a road trip. I understand Steve Kerr didn't think his team had much of a chance to win at Boston, where the Celtics have the best record, and they've now won 11 straight games. But there's got to be some value in a ticket to a regular season NBA game. And there was absolutely no value to it yesterday. We'll get to that. And I also want to talk about Chris Mortenson, who passed away yesterday at the age of 72. But first, a happy birthday to Gary Williams. Gary Williams, 79 years old today. We should all look so good at 59, much less 79. He retired 13 years ago. And over the years, I've looked at him. I've gotten to know him a little bit. And I've always thought, man, if he wants another run, he could probably have it. He looks good enough. Now, I don't think Gary would deal well with the college game today. The NIL, the transfer portal, I don't think that would work for him. But in terms of X's and O's, getting a team ready to play a big game, pulling off upsets over number one teams, which he did on a bunch of occasions against North Carolina and Duke, he was great. He's the greatest coach that Maryland basketball has ever had. And we spent a lot of time on the death of Lefty Driesell. Lefty's probably the most important coach that Maryland ever had, but Gary was the best coach, going to back-to-back Final Fours and winning the national championship in 2002. So happy birthday to Gary Williams, who's retired now, and obviously the way he looks, retirement agrees with him. Seems to be quite content and shows up at Maryland games from time to time. Probably wasn't content with what happened yesterday, and we will get to that mess coming up a little bit later in the show. Probably do that at 10 o'clock as Maryland is now in a position. They got one more regular season game that's at Penn State next Sunday night, and then they would go to the Big Ten tournament, needing to win 5 games in 5 days to make it to the NCAA. So that ain't happening there. You know, the other thing is they've got at least 2 games to go. They would really need to win this last regular season game to be assured they're finishing over 500. That includes the non-conference games, the cupcakes that they play early in the season. They lost some of them too. This has been just a disastrous year for them. Georgetown, they didn't really improve much under Ed Cooley. Maybe that's to be expected, but he is still ranting and raving. We'll play some of what he said after they blew a 15-point lead at home against Xavier on Saturday night. All that ahead. But I did know Chris Mortenson a little bit. I worked at ESPN for 6 years as a sidekick on Tony's show, and I used to do weekends with Mel Kiper. Was up in Bristol a few times and met him in person. I met him at the Super Bowl a number of times and had him on shows, and he was as good to me as he was to everybody. I mean, all the tributes that you're hearing are exactly the same. And Scott Van Pelt goes through that. I'm going to play this here in just a minute, this great obit that Adam Schefter did, and it stands up. You know, I don't always play the video from ESPN because it doesn't stand up on radio, but this is all talking, and you'll hear a couple of really classic sound bites in there. But this guy was a mensch. He really was, and he was a trailblazer in that when he was hired by ESPN in 1991, he was what was part of a big plan from John Walsh, who had a background in journalism. John Walsh had been, I think, an editor at Newsday. He had worked at various publications, including Sports Illustrated, and he decided that ESPN was going to be a journalism place as well as entertainment with Sports Center and games and things like that. But they were going to have real journalists who were going to cover stories in a way that they had been doing it for newspapers for years. I believe Peter Gammons was the first hire. Gammons, regarded as maybe the greatest baseball writer who ever lived with the Boston Globe. He made the transition to ESPN somewhere in the late 80s, which paved the way for people like Tim Kurkjian and Buster Olney. And then for football, the National had just folded up. National, if you don't remember, was basically ESPN.com before ESPN.com. It launched in 1990 before the internet, and it had good intentions and hired a whole bunch of good writers and spent a ton of money, but they just couldn't get the distribution out there. And remember the big yellow boxes that you used to see on the corner? Tony's got one in his basement. That was the way the paper was distributed. I guess there were some subscriptions, but you bought them at the newsstand. The problem was they just couldn't get out the paper, and the paper folded up after a year and a half. But that released a lot of great journalists, including Chris Mortenson, who had covered the Falcons for a long time for the Atlanta Journal-Constitution, and he was hired by John Walsh to be an actual reporter for ESPN. And in 1992, a year after he was hired at ESPN, we launched sports radio in town. It was on AM 570, and we had the Redskins games. And in those days, you could spend a little bit of money. So for the pregame shows, they hired Chris Mortenson to be an insider with me. We would do a segment, 8 to 10 minutes of news and notes around the NFL, and he would also appear on the station at least once a week, maybe twice a week on various shows. But he would say, "I have one rule. My rule is it's family time from 6 to 7:30." He has a son, who played college football at Arkansas and now is, I believe, an assistant at Alabama, or at least was when Nick Saban was there. And so he said, that's for me and my wife and my son, and it's off limits for radio. Now, the modern version of Mort is Adam Schefter, who is tied to his cell phone 24 hours a day and brags about never taking a vacation. Mort had great balance in his life, and he also, in breaking these scoops, was not a bulldog. He developed relationships with people, treated them with respect, and so when the time would come for people to pay him back, they would remember that, like when Peyton Manning announced his retirement. Nowadays, athletes do it all the time. We had it with Tom Brady. They announce it themselves on social media. And even though it was, 7, 8 years ago when Manning retired, he could have done the same thing, but he decided to give it to Chris Mortenson. And that's the kind of respect that they had for him. So this was the tribute that was done last night on ESPN with two people who knew Mort well, one really well in Adam Schefter, with Scott Van Pelt anchoring the coverage and saying this about Mortenson, who passed away yesterday at the age of 72.
Legend's a word that is used perhaps too casually, but Mort was every bit of the definition. Adam Schefter with more on the life of a Hall of Famer in every sense of the word.
It's easier to ask someone about dying once he is broken free of its grasp, as my friend, my mentor, and my on-air partner, Chris Mortenson, once did. After Mort was diagnosed with stage 4 throat cancer in 2015, before fending it off in 2017, he was asked what he would think and what would go through his mind if he knew he were dying, as he almost did. Mort said he would think of all his incredible life experiences, how blessed he has been, even with the heartbreaks along the way. He also added he would be sad to say goodbye to the people he loved, but he would be going to a place of glory. Chris Mortenson was born in Torrance, California, outside of Los Angeles in 1951. He served 2 years in the Army during the Vietnam War, married his wife Mickey and raised his son Alex, and established himself as one of the greatest reporters of all time, while being an even better man. Mort began his reporting career at his hometown newspaper, the Daily Breeze, before moving on to cover the Braves, Falcons, and the NFL at the Atlanta Journal-Constitution. In 1990, he was among the first reporters hired for the all-sports newspaper, The National. Mort arrived at ESPN in 1991. He left behind the newspaper business to work on the NFL studio shows, SportsCenter, the NFL Draft, and ESPN Radio. He was the reporter who could get to the bottom of the most difficult stories, yet still be the biggest prankster at the network, capable of making any and everyone laugh.
Loosen up my shot and give me a little more headroom. We do not like a lot of face of me on. That's actually in my contract, by the way.
Mort was the one who knowingly and wittingly set up former Colts executive Bill Tobin for one of the most memorable sound bites in NFL draft history.
You know, we got a guy up there. Who in the hell is Mel Kiper, in a way?
Mort impacted everyone he knew, often in ways he didn't even realize. A short time after Mort revealed he was battling stage 4 throat cancer and taking leave from ESPN, then Cardinals wide receiver Larry Fitzgerald scored a game-winning touchdown that advanced Arizona to the NFC Championship game. In the heady moments of his heroics, Fitzgerald still thought enough to send out a message to the man who had been on so many people's minds.
Mort, I want to tell you, man, we're thinking about you and fight, baby. Love you, Mort.
Everyone did. After Mort checked into the hospital in 2016, Peyton Manning delivered the scoop of his retirement for Mort to report while he battled cancer. The Mannings had known and trusted Mort for so long that there was no other consideration for giving that story to anyone other than Mort. And yet, while he made his living reporting on some of the toughest guys in sports, nobody was any tougher than Mort himself. Mort battled back from a veritable death sentence. He endured intensive radiation treatments. He lost his hair, weight, but never his sense of humor, spirit, nor fight. He often showed up on TV when he was too tired and worn down to do it. It went on for years, like his own fight to regain his health. And yet, through the years, Mort remained ESPN's reporting conscience, its most senior and trusted voice. He had seen so much, knew so many, and established himself not only as one of the greatest football reporters in history, but one of the greatest sports reporters in history. It is just one reason why so many turned to him for guidance on stories that mattered, because he did. Mort was a pioneer in this business, one of the first reporters to transition from newspapers to TV, making it possible for so many others to follow a similar path. Fred Gaudelli, the legendary producer of NFL games, once said that if there were a Mount Rushmore for ESPN, Mort unquestionably would be on it. Mort was nominated for 2 Pulitzer Prizes, wrote 2 highly acclaimed books, won 18 journalism awards, was selected to the Pro Football Hall of Fame as the Dick McCann Award winner in 2016, and became the only sports writer other than the great Red Smith to win the George Polk Award for reporting. But Mort really didn't need any awards to validate his greatness. Other aspects of a life well lived already accomplished that. And here's the truth about a man we loved as much as we respected. If someone's life makes you sad when it ends, it's because it was wonderful when it happened. Mort's truly was. He lived a life that touched so many others, full of faith and purpose, all leading to his ultimate and final accomplishment. Chris Mortenson is headed to his place of glory.
The same sentiment was woven into any tribute you saw on social media about Chris or just saw there from Adam, referencing kindness, decency, thoughtfulness, professionalism, faith, absolutely, and love for family and colleagues. As someone lucky enough to have known it, what I would tell you is it was the truth, and I'd tell you how lucky we were to have been in his orbit. He was a hell of a teammate. He was an honorable man. May his memory be a blessing to his family and to all who know and loved him. And we all did.
That was Scott Van Pelt and Adam Schefter with a great tribute to Chris Mortenson. There's not much I can add to that other than the thing I think about a lot in not just in sports but in life, that people who achieve greatness rarely have balance in their lives. There's something else that's outside of what they do that makes it difficult to really, have a great life, home life, and also have a great working career. And he managed to do that. He was one of the few people that I've really come across that that did that. He achieved true greatness in his work, obviously, as you heard from that report, but also, understood the dedication he needed to have to his wife and his son. And even, he lived in Atlanta for well over 20 years when he was working for the Atlanta Journal-Constitution, and then when he went to the National, and even when he went to ESPN. But his son, who was a great high school quarterback in the Atlanta area, when he committed to go to Arkansas, Mort and his wife moved to Arkansas to be near him. And I believe that's where he lived the rest of his life. This is a guy who grew up in California and lived in a big city like Atlanta and winds up going to Arkansas, where it didn't really work out for Alex, his son. He played there, I think, 2 years, didn't play very much, transferred to Georgia State, which is like a division, what they used to call Division I AA. They were a really good program. And I believe he was a backup there, but he learned, of course, a lot about football being around his dad. And the way people felt about him, Jeff Fisher, who is the coach of the Tennessee Titans, took him on as an undrafted free agent, knowing he wasn't going to make the team, but gave him an opportunity to play in an exhibition game, because that's how people felt about Mort. And yes, Alex Mortenson was not going to be an NFL quarterback, but he got an opportunity to get a taste of that, and that led him to a second career as a coach. And he may one day elevate to be a head coach. He's with big programs, including Alabama. And I think that if you look at a man's life and what he does, and then you can say at the end of it, yeah, he covered it well on both sides. A lot of people struggle with it all the time. Am I devoting enough time to my family, to the rest of my life? Do I have balance? Do I treat people well? He checked all the boxes, and he was just an incredible reporter and just a really good man, a mensch. And so nice tribute from both Adam Schefter and Scott Van Pelt last night on SportsCenter. I want to rant a little bit about this NBA game yesterday in Boston. What now is the value of a regular season ticket in the NBA? If you watched that game yesterday, not much. So yesterday, Golden State Warriors, Game 4 of a 4-game East Coast trip, finish up in Boston against the Celtics, who have the best record in the NBA. They're riding a 10-game win streak, and they are probably going to be the favorites to win the NBA championship, and this might finally be the year for them. Okay, understandable. And understandable that the Warriors at this point, 3-0 on a 4-game trip, go into Boston thinking this is gravy if we get a win. But they didn't compete. They lost this game to the Celtics yesterday, 140-88, the 52-point blowout, one of the biggest in the history of the Boston Celtics. And they've had some incredible teams over the years. 52 points. And Steph Curry, who was terrible yesterday, 2 of 13 from the field. He only had 4 points, 3 assists, 1 rebound, only played 17 minutes, said, "This is what we used to do to teams. We used to do this." And in fact, these are the same Warriors, at least the guts of them, with Curry and Klay Thompson and Draymond Green. That's the team that won 73 games in the 2015-2016 season. They didn't win the NBA championship. That was LeBron James and the Cleveland Cavaliers winning Game 7 on the road, the first team to do that since the Bullets had done it in 1978 when they beat Seattle. But that team had the best regular season in the history of the NBA, 73 games. It probably would have won in the finals, too, against Cleveland if Draymond Green hadn't have been an idiot and kicked LeBron and the fellas and was suspended for a game. Probably they would have wrapped that thing up, but they didn't. And that is the blemish of a 73-win season. A lot of people thought when the Bulls got to 72, my God, nobody's going past that. In fact, I remember when the Bulls were playing that season, which would have been Jordan's first full year back after missing most of 2 years because he was playing baseball. During that season, as they were rolling along, people were saying, they may get to 72. Jordan gives you 100% every night, and with Jordan at his best, you're just not going to beat them. And I remember John Nash, who at the time was the general manager of the Bullets, saying, no. Phil Jackson is not going to let that team top the Lakers' record of 69 wins because he's not going to burn them out in the regular season. Got to save it for the playoffs. Well, they got to 72 and went through the playoffs and won another championship. I think that was the year that they beat Utah. I think that was a Utah win. One of the it was the second round of three-peats that they did it. And so here come the Warriors in recent history. This isn't like, for some of you, ancient history in the last century. This was 2015, 2016 when they won 73 games. Well, clearly, and part of it may be that they're an older team now, but they're not a slam dunk to get into the playoffs. They're still chasing that. But listen to how Kerr describes what happened, and it almost sounds like he threw in the towel before this game even tipped off.
You flush it down the toilet. We had a great road trip, 3-1. We've had a million games. So Boston was amazing. We weren't beating them today. So we head home and get ready for Wednesday.
Yeah. And this has been sort of an open secret in the NBA for years that, you try to salvage what you can out of a road trip. You're not going to win all 4 games, most likely. But even still, even on the odd chance that you can, have things go right for you. You have a day where maybe the Celtics are shooting cold or somebody, you don't hope for this, but a star player goes down with a twisted ankle or something like that. You try to win the game. But this is what Draymond Green said after the game about how they prepared for it. And this has to be galling for people who, not that they're not seeing a good team in Boston, but this is a West Coast team, a team from the Western Conference in Golden State. So they're only coming to Boston once a year. This was their one time in there. And kids especially, they want to see Steph Curry. They want to see the greatest shooter of all time, and they saw him for a whopping 17 minutes in a blowout game where he went 2 for 13. And it sounds like, if you listen to Draymond Green here, there was no real attempt to win the game. None. This is how he described how they put together their defensive game plan.
I don't think we really played a full defensive strategy to kind of dive into that. We didn't implement. We implemented our strategy like 15 minutes before we left the locker room. So I don't necessarily think we put together a full defensive strategy to debate on what they're doing with their offense and how to stop it. But it's okay.
We put together our defensive strategy 15 minutes before the game. And Jaylen Brown was almost insulted by that. He was their top scorer for the Celtics, 29 points, played only 22 minutes, 11 of 19 from the field, 5 of 10 from 3. In the first quarter, he scored 19 points. And he said, we thought it was disrespectful, but we took advantage of it. And it wasn't even disrespectful. It was disgusting. It was quitting before they started. Because if they really respected the Celtics, they respected the Celtics, I guess, too much is the way to put it. Because if they thought they had a chance, they might have played, but they didn't. They knew they didn't have a chance. And to say that you put together your defensive strategy 15 minutes before the game, and just the tone of his voice. Again, here's more from Draymond about this game.
We went 3-1, and I think for us that successful trip. You come in here with a free swing. 3-0 on the road trip didn't work. I think it was a good trip for us.
Yeah. 3-0. Okay, we'll roll out the balls on the court in Boston. If things are going well for us, if the shots are dropping for Steph, maybe we hang in for a while. Otherwise, we're checking out because we're playing with house money here. We're 3-0 on the road trip. And it's not going to change in the NBA. There aren't going to be fewer games. But this is what the league is now facing with the commissioner who has totally turned the league over to the players. You look at contrast only 8 years ago. So 2015, 2016, this same group, now they were younger, that's true, but this same group won 73 games. They had enough pride to compete every night so that they lost a whopping 9 times for the entire season. And now, with the same group of old warriors. You know, they got a fistful of rings, and they're going to go down as one of the great dynasties in the history of sports. But to just basically blow off a game against the Boston Celtics, that's a terrible look for the NBA. That's just a bad look. And the kids that went to this game, and maybe they're Celtics fans, and they got to see the home team win their 11th straight game and reestablish themselves as the new kings of the hill, all that's fine. But they haven't won a championship yet. And when you pay whatever it takes, you know, who knows, tickets, I'm sure, north in many cases of well over $100, maybe in some good seats, $200 to see that. And I'm sure it was a sellout game, as it was here last week when Steph Curry showed up here. And he didn't really play well in that. That game was won with the bench. The bench did a lot there. Klay Thompson had 25 off the bench for them. That people will show up and they expect to see a respectable effort. And this was not a respectable effort in any way. A 140-88 loss. It was like a 52-point lead in the first half. I mean, it just isn't good. It's just not a good thing for a league. And you got to look at Adam Silver, who came in, and I thought that he did some very good things at the beginning when he kicked Donald Sterling out. The video surfaced of Donald Sterling saying racist things about Magic Johnson and others. Boom, you're gone. Get out. Okay, he's got some teeth. But as time has evolved, first he blessed load management, you know, so we have guys who just don't play in certain games. And then the NBA quietly released a study which found that load management did not cut down on injuries. So I don't even know if they talk about it anymore. The big three played yesterday. Draymond was on the court. Steph was on the court briefly. Klay Thompson played, but they didn't show up. And if you look at what Michael Jordan did, not only would he play 72 games a year, he would play hard every night. And I bet over the course of his career, I know he didn't have a 52-point blowout. I mean, maybe he had one, maybe whatever reason, but this just wouldn't happen. And if you want to sell a product where you have the best in the world, the most competitive people who play basketball, otherwise they wouldn't get to this level, and to absolutely mail it in and go, we were 3-0 off the road trip. And we come in here and we put together a defensive game plan 15 minutes before the game, and the coach says, we weren't beating Boston today. Well, that's throwing in the towel. That's quitting. That's the biggest sin in sports, quitting. And it sounds like they basically quit before the game. They did not expect to win it. They didn't make any attempt to win it. And what they put out on the court was garbage, complete garbage, a 52-point blowout loss. Not good. Not good for the league. All right, we'll get speaking of not good, college basketball weekend here, not good for the locals. Plus, we'll hear from the three candidates to become the next Commanders quarterback as we continue with the Andy Pollard Show, ESPN 630. Caleb Williams, Drake Maye, Jayden Daniels. We'll hear from all three of them over the next hour as the fun speculation continues for quarterback for the Washington Commanders. Who will it be? Will they trade up to get Caleb Williams? Will they stay at number 2? If they do stay at number 2, will it be Drake Maye or will it be Jayden Daniels? We don't know. Or could they pull a complete surprise in a quarterback-rich draft where they've been trying to find one for decades, or basically since Kirk Cousins was allowed to walk away? Could they trade down? J.J. McCarthy has suddenly moved up the draft board. And one of the reasons for it is that McCarthy doesn't really have a bad game. Michigan was so good this year. It might even be the Maryland game. That was, I think, their closest game of the year. I was there in College Park where they actually struggled to win the game. Is it possible that was it? But he's moving up the board too, and you hear certain teams like the Giants are going to do whatever they can to get into the top 5 so they can take a quarterback, and maybe they'll find a way to get one of the big 3. Who knows? I mean, it's all crazy speculation, and we'll get to what they had to say about their draft prospects and how they've looked and so forth with Mike Florio and Chris Sims as they were doing their show, Pro Football Talk, from the Combine this past week. But a little college basketball to get out of the way, and I try to watch most of the Maryland games. I've been a Maryland basketball fan my whole life. Didn't go to Maryland, but have been watching them for well over 50 years. The first game I remember going to at Cole Fieldhouse was 1972, so at least 52 years ago. And I saw some great teams over the years, and the team that didn't have the biggest star power was the one that won the national championship in 2002, Juan Dixon as his best player, and he was kind of just a journeyman pro. The teams that had superstars, the tragedy of Len Bias, the great Tom McMillan, Len Elmore teams, they didn't do it. And the McMillan-Elmore teams, they only made it once of the 3 years that they played varsity. But I try to watch the games, and I was optimistic about this season. They had their 3 top players back from a team that had made the tournament, had a really good year, and ran into, in the second round, they ran into Alabama, which was the number one seed, and they lost. So you figure, okay, they're going to retool. They're going to bring in some new guys to complement the 3 big guys that are coming back, and Julian Reese and Dante Scott and Jameer Young. And while Scott and Young have been good this year, as Reese has been at times, although he's had some incredibly bad games where he scored no points or 1 point, they've played okay. The freshmen that they brought in, like Harris Smith and Kaiser, they've been big disappointments. Kaiser was supposed to be a big three-point shooter. He's not. Harris Smith was supposed to be the next great point guard at Maryland. So far, he has not been. And they have had just abysmal shooting all year long. They're one of the worst teams in college basketball in shooting the ball. I looked at the numbers last week. There were only like 10 or 11 teams in the entire country that were worse at shooting the three, and maybe 20 that were worse overall shooting. Yesterday against Indiana, for them, they shot pretty well. 9 of 24 from 3. Okay, that's not great, but that's better than it's been. Now, Jameer Young had a bad day shooting threes. He was 1 for 6. And for the game, they were 30 of 62 from the field, which isn't horrible. It's not great, but they found a way to blow a 16-point lead against an Indiana team that isn't that good. Indiana's not making the tournament this year either. And what fueled them a lot last year was winning at home. I think they won all of their home games last season. This year, not the case. Coach Kevin Willard.
We've struggled at home this year. It's been a little bit, it's been a little. That's probably been the most frustrating thing. We've had 3 games in this building where if we had won those 3 games, it'd been totally different. And we've just, for some reason, we've just struggled. We haven't struggled nearly as much on the road. They seem much more relaxed on the road than they do at home. I can't really put my finger on.
Yeah, I don't know either. Maybe it's expectations that they, since they won all their games at home last year, they were supposed to do it again this year. But they've been bad. Now they lose a bunch of close games. They've got 10 games of 5 points, 5-point losses or fewer. So you could theoretically say 50 more points. They might be one of the top teams in the country, but they're not. They're a 500 team, 15-15, and they're really bad in the Big Ten, 7-12 now. This is now a team that has clearly underachieved. There's no question about that. But, and we'll get to what Ed Cooley is saying about his team in his first year at Georgetown, Willard has never wavered from this sentiment and said it again yesterday.
They have battled. They have played their ass off for me all year. They've had a great attitude. I think, again, some of the late buckets are probably just frustration level, reaching a certain point of it's been that type of year.
Yeah. So the situation is this. They finish up the regular season. It's a Sunday night game at Penn State, and then they will go to the Big Ten tournament, and anything short of 5 wins in 5 days, very unlikely, their season will come to an end. I don't even think they would be in the NIT. Georgetown, meantime, they've had a miserable season. They've been terrible the last couple of years. They have two Big East wins over the last 2 years, both of them against DePaul. They didn't have any last year. They beat DePaul home and on the road this year. And on Saturday, they're playing Xavier at home. And they had lost to Xavier earlier in the season, scored a bunch of points, close game, lost. And then they come back, and they're up 15 in this game. They're up 15 points on Xavier, and they find a way to lose the game 98-93. And whereas you've had a very complimentary Kevin Willard throughout the season, Ed Cooley, inherited some of these players, but also, with the NIL, had a chance to bring in his own guys, as we've had teams like what Rick Pitino did at St. John's, basically turning over the entire roster. His tone has been more like this as it was on Saturday night.
You scored 93 points. You're supposed to win the game. So clearly our defensive intensity, our defensive alertness, our connectivity defensively, I'm tired of coming in here repeating the same thing, right? So this got to be personal with our men. That game was definitely to be had. And the team that wanted it more, the team that had a little bit more desperation, give them credit, right? Give Sean's team a lot of credit, right? They played well enough to win, and I don't think they played well. They just played well enough to win, right? Two teams, back-to-back games we played them, both giving up over 180-something points. I'm pretty sure Sean's happy about the win and very, very disappointed in his defensive intensity as well. So, we got another quick turnaround. Really, really disappointed in our defense. Totally disappointed in our defense. Absolutely horrific attention to detail in this game. Totally, 98 points of regulation. I should have been out there with you defending, because that's what we look like. 5 old men out there defending. Old-ass men.
Sean is Sean Miller, the coach at Xavier. He came in about this time, April of last year. So he had all this time to bring in all these NIL guys and transfer portal guys, veteran guys. And what he brought in was supposed to be a team that he thought he can compete with this year. Hasn't been the answer. So, again, at this news conference on Saturday night after the loss, the question was, well, what is the answer?
You've said the same things over and over and over again coming in here. What is the answer to
recruiting?
Recruiting. He jumped in. Recruiting. Well, that's up to you. And this is in Providence. When this Ed Cooley, I think, is a very good coach, and he obviously did a very good job at Providence. But Providence is not Washington. Providence doesn't have a pro team. Washington is a pro town. And it also has a high-profile college basketball program, which, as I've just outlined here, is going through a tough year. We'll see if he can build it at Georgetown. It's a tough putt here because you got a pro arena with, even if you draw a good crowd like 10,000, the place is half empty. It's going to be tough for him, and we'll see if he can get it done. I like his spirit. He does take the blame. Even when he's ripping his players, he says it's on me. But they have not responded to him this year. I mean, that's a truly a bad team. That's one of the worst teams in the country, and their season has 2 more regular season games to go. They play against Providence tomorrow night at home, and then they finish the regular season at St. John's, and then we'll go play in the Big East tournament at Madison Square Garden. But I don't like their chances whatsoever. So it's likely 3 games to go, and we'll see what he does for a rebuild next year for a team that just has looked awful at times. And even when they play well, as they did on Saturday night, they can't close. And as he says, when you score 93 points, you're supposed to win. 93 points in a college basketball game is supposed to get it done. All right, some combine yak as the 3 potential Commanders quarterbacks spoke. I would say the least likely is Caleb Williams, who's from here, starred at Gonzaga, and has a rocket arm. And usually when you talk to a great college quarterback, pretty good chance along the way he played baseball, because if you have a great arm, the baseball team is going to want you to come out and pitch. This was interesting. This is again last week. So it's Mike Florio and Chris Sims of Pro Football Talk talking to Caleb Williams about his background.
Did you play baseball growing up?
Never played baseball.
Never played baseball.
Never in my life.
That's shocking because you got some of that Mahomes delivery.
I think it comes from swimming.
Right.
Being able to extend and have a good T-spine and things like that.
Right.
To be able to rotate and throw it at any position.
Wow, that's interesting. That's the first time I've heard a quarterback talk about swimming and incorporating it that way.
Yeah.
Damn. So all right, and then who'd you get this great physical ability? Is it mom? Is it dad? Who?
I got to give it to mom.
The family? Mom.
I'm not going to say the height. My mom's pretty short. She's like 5'1", but athletic ability, I'd probably say my mom.
Yeah.
But shout out to my dad for the height.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
That's good. I always love when mom gets love.
Yeah.
Always.
One of the things I love, and he knows me well, I love it when somebody's in a position to push back a little bit about everything that goes on here. You decided no medical testing.
Yep.
What led to that decision, and what kind of reaction, if any, have you gotten?
I mean, obviously, when you start doing things that's not traditional, whether you're at a school like USC.
And I support you 100%.
Yeah.
Trust me.
Whether you're here at the Combine that's
Yeah.
been going on for, I don't know how many years, but a long time.
Right.
And so I'd say the main thing has just been, it was a decision with my family and my team. And it really came down to not all 32 teams can draft me. So I give all 32 teams.
Yeah.
My personal medical things, there's nothing there. Played all 30, how many ever games I played.
I don't even remember you being banged up like the
never,
slightest.
I've never came off the field unless
love
my
it.
helmet came off and the ref took me off.
Right.
And so, my thing has just been, give it to the teams that are going to pursue me. So on my visits, I'll be doing medicals, but just decided not to do it here.
And it sounds to me like there will be a filter on where you're going to take visits. So let's be realistic about the teams that have a chance to get me. Why am I going to waste my time and your time to do all these things that aren't necessary because I kind of know where I'm going to go? It's fair to say.
Yeah, and in a sense, I have an idea of where I'm going to go, not the place, but the
the
place,
general area of the draft.
We know the spot.
You're going in the top 2 picks. You're going number 1, bro.
Yeah,
Just to let you know, you're going 1. It's already done.
Yeah.
It's going to be boring. I'm not even going to talk about you that much because I'm going to kiss your ass for about another 10 days, and I got to move on to other conversations.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you.
Oh, the slurping from Chris Sims was really ridiculous. Bro, you're going to go number 1. I know you're going to go number 1. Stop with that already. It's a swimming thing. Interesting. You don't usually hear a quarterback credit swimming for his ability to throw the ball at all different angles. The medical thing, where you have here Mike Florio patting him on the back for not taking the medical at the Combine. Well, here's why this handicaps the Bears. I just saw today that his visit to Chicago is not due to take place until the 20th. So it's going to be another couple of weeks, 16 days, before he goes and he visits the Bears, and that's when he's going to do his medical. If you're the Bears, would you feel confident trading Justin Fields right now if you are unsure that some crazy thing could pop up on the medical, which they do from time to time? I mean, at least if you had this report from the Combine, it might help you in moving forward. So, Mike can say, oh, great, good for you. You had the leverage to do it. Yeah, and he does, because he's probably going to be the number 1. That'll make you happy there, Chris. But it's not great for the Bears right now. It's not the best position to be in. One more thing from Caleb Williams. This is on who he liked growing up.
What quarterback did you idolize growing up?
Aaron Rodgers.
Yeah. That's. I feel like it's kind of standard. I've always said your favorite quarterback's favorite quarterback is Aaron Rodgers, right? Yeah. I mean, now it's going to another few years it's going to be Patrick Mahomes, right? But I mean, yeah. What was it about him that you were like?
His ability to throw from any platform.
Right.
Whether he was in pocket, out of pocket, being able to place the ball exactly where he wants. A few of the Hail Marys were pretty cool.
Right.
Just his moxie.
Yeah.
Toughness. Being able to throw the ball.
How far can you throw it?
Yeah, a good one. I was going to get there.
70-some yards.
Yeah. 70.
Once you get past
70, you just go, I don't really care. Right.
You never throw a ball 70 yards. So
it's farther than most people on the planet.
Yeah. So I don't know, 70-something yards.
And here's the value of that kind of an arm. Now, it's good to have an NFL arm. There's no question about that. And we've seen quarterbacks fail because they don't have an NFL arm, as Danny Werfel did not. The old ball coach, Steve Spurrier, in love with him because he won the Heisman Trophy at Florida, didn't have the NFL arm, and that's why it didn't work out for him. But many years ago, in that crazy year of 2000, when they went for it and they brought in Jeff George and Deion Sanders and Bruce Smith and the whole thing about, going for it that year, Dan Snyder's first full year as owner, that was the year they charged for training camp. And we did most of our shows out from Ashburn. So I was there almost every day. And you'd see the quarterback warm-ups, and they'd warm up side by side. It was Brad Johnson and Jeff George. And Brad Johnson had an NFL arm, adequate, not the arm that George had. And George would throw these unbelievable spirals. And one day we had him on the show, and I asked him how far he could throw it. He said 85, and I believed it. And he probably could throw it 85, but he was a head case. He was a failed NFL quarterback. Even though he had a couple of good years here and there, he took the Vikings to, I don't know if he got to the NFC Championship game, but right before that. But arm strength, doesn't mean anything. And despite the gushing that you get from Chris Sims there, bro, you're gonna go number one. You're gonna go number one, bro. And all the other people that interviewed him in the combine. Oh yeah, he's a good guy, and things are getting out there. It's reported again that the father didn't necessarily ask to have part ownership of the team, but he inquired about it. Let's put it that way. And Florio even said at one point, well, maybe we should give these guys part ownership. No, you shouldn't do that. Part ownership happens when you're really successful, like Tom Brady, and you make enough money to buy part of the Raiders. When you're Magic Johnson and you have this unbelievable NBA career and you can buy into a bunch of teams, including the Commanders here. You don't do that. So, let's everybody pump their brakes. I think he's going to be number one. He's probably going to wind up with the Chicago Bears. But as far as the combine erasing doubts in everybody's mind about all the problems that could crop up with him, I don't think you're out of the woods yet. Just don't feel that way. Coming up, we'll hear from two of the other prospects. If Caleb Williams doesn't come here, it seems pretty certain it'll either be Drake Maye or Jayden Daniels, with Washington sitting at number 2, but you never know. They both sat down and talked with the crew of Pro Football Talk, and we'll get to what they said about their prospects as we continue. It's the Andy Pollin Show, ESPN 630.
The Andy Pollin Show on ESPN 630, the sports capital.
So we got Tony coming up at 11 on this cloudy Monday, and we started off the 9 o'clock hour with talk about Chris Mortenson, who passed away yesterday at the age of 72. Tony knew him both from ESPN and as his days as a reporter with the Atlanta Journal-Constitution. So I'm looking forward to hearing what Tony has to say about Mort, who was just a real mensch, a great person off the beat, off his beat, the NFL, and one of the all-time greats in doing what he did as a reporter, and did it in a way with such class that it's a job where you sometimes think people have to be abrasive. He never was. In digging for the story, he did it in a way that treated people with respect. And when it came back, when they were able to return it, as Peyton Manning was when he gave him the scoop on his retirement, they were happy to do it because of the person that he was. All right, more evaluation from the Combine. Eeny, meeny, miny, mo. Who's it going to be, assuming that it's going to be Caleb Williams of USC going number 1, either to the Bears or if they trade the pick, whoever has that number 1 pick. And then number 2, is it going to be Jayden Daniels or Drake Maye? And as I said, about this time last week, it seemed certain that it was going to be Drake Maye. And with a big gaggle of reporters and talking heads gathering for a week, it gets talked out to the point where, oh, no. Jayden Daniels is clearly number 2, and there are those who feel that he should be number 1. The Heisman Trophy winner from LSU. He's the best quarterback in the draft. And how they were able to get it to this point. He didn't even throw last week. He did take the medicals, which Caleb Williams did not. But that it just doesn't doesn't make sense in that there wasn't anything definitive that was done last week other than people just talking and talking and talking. And we got to the point by the end of the week where, people were saying, well, Drake Maye, he's played 2 years. They've seen enough flaws there. They may not be able to fix him. And Jayden Daniels, he's the goods. All three of them did interviews with Pro Football Talk. All three of them, at least to me, coming off impressively, including Daniels when he was asked about leaving Arizona State. If you don't remember, he played his freshman year at Arizona State and then went to LSU. And he was asked about that transition and going from the Pac-12 to the SEC.
Getting out of my comfort zone, being comfortable being uncomfortable, and going to LSU, I didn't know what I was getting myself into. I didn't know anybody. I only knew one coach on the staff that was at Arizona State my freshman year. But other than that, I didn't know any players. I didn't know anybody like that, so I was just going there. Kind of how it'd be in an NFL locker room, going in there and just put your head down and go to work, and you got to gain the respect of your teammates.
Who's your idol growing up, right? Who's the quarterback right now you watch where you go, man, he's on, I'm watching?
Yeah, growing up for me, it was Donovan McNabb and Michael Vick.
Okay, right.
So I remember playing with Michael Vick in Madden. When he was on the
I
cover,
played against Mike.
100 speed, running around on Madden.
Right.
So those are the two that inspired me to play quarterback. But now, for me, I just like watching football in general. I love football.
Yeah.
It's what I do. So I watch all the games. When I get the chance, especially at LSU, we had Sundays off, so I was able to go there, take care of business, and come back by the time the games start. I'm sitting on the couch and I'm just watching NFL football.
Right. Okay, so I have this vision now of Jayden Daniels playing Madden and creating Jayden Daniels in Madden and giving himself 100 speed because he deserves it. What uniform do you look best in?
Ooh, whatever one calls my name.
I don't know if he deserves 100 speed, all right? I've seen Michael Vick in person run. He's 99 or 98. I'll take that. All right. Michael Vick in person had 3 rockets up his ass. So let me just tell you, he was flying. No doubt about it. All right, so one of the things that people pick apart with you, right? Your frame, your weight, right? You're 6'4", 210, right? You're still a young kid. You're going to fill out. I'm not worried about it. But do you have to put some emphasis on eating? Like, I even did in my plan. I tell my wife, put an extra stick of butter on there, whatever, right? Are you conscious of that, or you are who you are?
Yeah, 100%. I think it's both.
Okay.
I am who I am. God blessed me with this frame for a reason. So he ain't blessed me to be 6'6", 240 pounds.
Right.
So I can't complain about, this is the path that he want me to take, but I am conscious about it. Obviously, I want to fill out, but that comes with maturity over the years.
Right. You a weightlifter?
100%.
Yeah, you do. I know. Some guys do weight lifts, but they just do it a little to kind of stay in shape. But you'll lift some heavy weight too?
I'll lift.
Yeah.
I'll lift.
All right, cool. That's good to hear, man. I'm a believer in that.
What's your one game that if we were going to look at your film and it was going to show us what you do best, what's the game we should look at?
Yeah, I would just say from a overall standpoint, I would just say this past year, Mississippi State. I'll say that just pinpoint who I am as a quarterback. Decision making, be able to get outside the pocket, make the throws down the field, contested throws and stuff like that.
More from Jayden Daniels, and he's talking to Mike Florio and Chris Sims, Pro Football Talk at the Combine last week. This, I think, was the thing that really people were talking about, and his attitude. And his attitude leaving college to make the next step into the NFL.
Don't be too good to learn, because I have a lot of experience in college football, but coming to the NFL is a totally different game. So going there with the open mind and, like I said, just be myself. That's what got me here to this point. And learn more how to be a professional. I kind of know a little bit, but this is my first time being a professional now.
Yeah, you'll learn. You'll see. I have no doubt about that. I mean, you get in that locker room with some of the veteran players. Yeah. They'll show you the way.
It was great what you said earlier too. Transferring to LSU, it was kind of like what you're going to go through.
Right.
You get pulled out of a place where you were for 3 years, and you get dropped into a new environment where there's a lot of great players, the SEC players. I mean, all due respect, better than what you generally would see where you were, and so you've kind of gone through it already.
Right. No, 100%. And I do agree with you. SEC is the best conference,
no doubt.
No, best competition. But
right,
I kind of went through it a little bit.
Was it noticeable for you once you got to the SEC? Like, wow, this is different here.
Yeah, I would say the difference is those monsters up
the
front.
linemen, right?
Monsters up front.
Right, exactly.
That's the biggest difference.
Every week, it's pretty much 4 NFL players.
100%.
Pac-12, you got one every now and then, right?
But those monsters up front, boy, they come get you now.
Well, who's the guy in the NFL? Who's the monster up front that you see? You're gonna say, "Uh-oh."
I mean, I ain't gonna back down for anybody, but you got the Myles Garrett's, freaks like that, that can move around that big. And you got the Bosa brothers, the Watt, TJ Watt.
I don't know, Micah Parsons. I don't know. You'll be able to outrun him around the corner. That'll be fun to watch.
I mean, me and Micah got to see.
We'll have to see.
Well, you might see him twice a year. You might see Micah Parsons twice a year if he is drafted by Washington. Again, that's Jayden Daniels, who came off, I thought, very well in that conversation. The last one is from Drake Maye. And again, this time last week, seems certain once Caleb Williams gone, Drake Maye goes number 2, and some were like Tim Hasselback were saying, oh, yeah, Drake Maye, best quarterback in the draft. Not even close. Take him over Caleb Williams if you're the Bears. Now looks like he's being projected for New England at number 3. That's just, sort of the way things roll with this. The one thing I will say, though, and you can look up his picture or look up this entire interview on YouTube, Drake Maye, although he's only been in college for 3 years, so what does that make him, 21, I guess? He could pass for 15. It doesn't really even look like he's shaved yet. I'm sure he has, but this is a very young-looking, young quarterback. Now, you could say, Drake, that might be a negative, too, in that he's only been in college for 3 years, and, we have a guy like Drake, Jayden Daniels, where he's 5 years, spends 1 year at Arizona State and then plays 4 years at LSU and doesn't really emerge until his 4th year there. It's kind of like, Joe Burrow, who sat the bench for 2 years at Ohio State, transfers to LSU, has a pretty good junior year, and then emerges with a senior year, which is considered to be among the best of all time. So who knows? So this is Maye, young-looking Drake Maye, talking about his prospects and answering the question, what did he think was his best game from this past season?
Shoot, from this past year, I think Syracuse, I threw it around the yard in Syracuse, and last year against Wake Forest, 2022 season against Wake. So probably those 2 games, just running around, making throws, just keeping the ball moving. That's the biggest thing a quarterback does, keep the ball moving and scoring points.
Who'd you grow up rooting for in football? Who was your team?
Yeah, so I'm from Charlotte, so I was the biggest Panthers fan.
Okay.
I love Cam Newton,
right.
So those guys.
Yeah, okay, yep. I had some battles with them back in the day.
Yeah, oh yeah.
What about now, quarterback-wise, right? Who was your idol growing up, other than Cam Newton?
Yeah,
I mean,
I love Aaron Rodgers. Love watching Aaron Rodgers growing up.
Right.
Just the way he has so much talent, and nowadays watching. Josh Allen and some of those guys is pretty cool to watch. It's always fun watching Mahomes.
Yeah, of course. I mean, come on,
you gotta
we
watch
know.
Mahomes.
Yeah.
During your time in college, who's the best guy that you faced?
Best guy that I
from
faced.
another team.
Best guy that I faced. Oh, Kalijah Kancey. He played for
Pitt.
For Pitt. D tackle, I think, with the Buccaneers.
Yes, you're right.
I think we were in Pitt, and at the end of the first half, we were in a 2-minute drill, and I got knocked out. He knocked me out for targeting, and he ended up coming back on because Kalijah, had to sit out the rest of the game. But it's a great player and a great dude.
Yeah. What about your game? I mean, you kind of got it all. You got size.
Yes, sir.
People kind of pick at your movement a little bit, right? A little, right? But I've been watching this week. You can go run and get first downs and do all that. Got a strong arm. I mean, when you stripe it, yes, right? What's the one thing you go, I wish I could clean this up about my game a little bit?
Yeah, anytime, in the pocket, I think, mobility is one of my best things that I do, making plays and, moving around and kind of feeling the pocket.
Yeah.
Sometimes I think I can, over-move and maybe just a little slide or a little movement and make a throw, stay on target instead of, kind of rolling out and kind of creating some own pressure. But at the same time, I make so many plays with my feet and it's dangerous, tough for defenses, so not really trying to harp too much on that.
What are you working on right now? I mean, who are you working with is what I meant to say.
I'm working with David Morris down there in Mobile, Alabama. He played at Ole Miss, was Eli Manning's backup, and he's the head of QB country, which is a big kind of quarterback development thing around the South.
Anything mechanically that you've fixed or you've had to work on throwing the football? Anything there where you're like, oh, I tweaked this a little bit in my time out there?
No, I think I've always thrown it. Try to keep the same stuff.
Thing go.
No, but down there, working under center is different, obviously in the NFL and play action and just learning the NFL game. You got the digit system and the West Coast stuff. So just learning ball. Trying to
you had some coaching in high school from an NFL quarterback, Josh McCown.
Oh yeah.
Right. What's the biggest thing you learned from him?
Oh shoot, with Josh, not just being consistent. He always talks about being consistent, getting on the same platform. You make throws. Josh is, did it for so long. He knows so many different things, and I think the best thing he told me is just relationships, being with the guys. Creating relationships with the guys, with the coaches, and how to handle all that stuff. He's the best. You can sit down with Josh and talk to him for hours. He's the best dude, one of the best dudes out there.
Are you a vocal leader or more of a leader of example, right?
I think it's one of those things, my leadership style is I'll go in there and work hard and kind of show by example. And then kind of once I earn that respect, trying to turn into a vocal guy where people start to listen to me once I get the respect.
Yeah. I mean, you are you aware of this quarterback class? It's pretty cool, right?
Yeah.
I mean, you watched all these guys, if you got a chance on a Saturday night when you guys weren't playing and all that?
Oh, for sure. I think it's one of the coolest things about the Combine. It does so well that you meet all these guys, sitting down with Jayden and JJ and, Caleb and Mike Penix and Bo Nix. Train with Bo Nix down there, so I know a lot of those guys.
Oh, okay, cool.
The coolest thing is meeting them and just kind of seeing their story and seeing their other side of things is awesome.
Yeah, good for you, man.
When you look at the board and you look at who has the picks, and I know you've got no control over it at the end of the day, but
right now, you're Tom Brady's replacement, it sounds like, in New England. That's what it sounds like right now.
Ready to go wherever.
I used to ask guys if you get on Madden and put yourself in the different uniforms and see how you look. Did you give much thought to where you may end up?
No, I really haven't. I think that's one of the coolest things about the NFL. Can't really control it, and it's not like recruiting or anything like that. For college, you kind of just thank the good Lord and pray about it, and just trust in that.
It's Drake Maye, who could be the quarterback here, or he could wind up in New England, or could tumble down the board. Although it doesn't seem quite like it did when Aaron Rodgers came out. It was, if you remember, this is 2005, so we're going back 19 years here. But in that draft going in, 49ers had the number 1 pick, and it seemed to be a coin flip there between Alex Smith and Aaron Rodgers. And Rodgers was in their backyard. He had played at Cal. And Alex Smith, he had played at Utah and had been an outstanding college quarterback. Both of them had been. And you thought, well, if the 49ers take one or the other, the next one is going to go maybe 2, 3, most picks down the board. So the 49ers take Alex Smith, number 1, and one of the more famous green room scenes of that time. This is when I think the first round was still on Saturday at that point. I don't think they had gone to a primetime schedule yet, if I'm not mistaken. And you just saw Aaron Rodgers sitting. And, some point somebody interviewed him from ESPN, and finally he went 24 to the Packers. I don't think you're going to see that with these 3. They could go 1, 2, 3. It seems almost certain that they will go 1, 2, 3 in the draft. But there's a lot of thinking and rethinking that goes along with it. And May, talking about recruiting, Mac Brown got him to stay home because he had committed to Alabama. May was going to go play there, and they, I guess, because of the family history, his brother Luke had played on a national championship team at North Carolina in basketball. He's got another brother who's a walk-on player at North Carolina in basketball. His older brother played at Florida, but they all grew up in that Charlotte area. So he prevailed upon him to stay home, and I guess it worked out. But, also you've got the Mitch Trubisky comparisons here, another North Carolina quarterback who failed, and the jury's out on Sam Howell, but Sam Howell does not appear to be a franchise guy. So we got another 6 weeks of this. Who's it going to be? What's going to happen? And I think it'll be really telling what the Bears do with Justin Fields. They've sort of promised him that they will trade him away before free agency, which has another week before that opens up. But you also have the complicated circumstance with Caleb Williams, who refused to take the medicals at the Combine, says he will do it for individual teams, but the Bears aren't due to talk to him until March the 20th, which is long after free agency opens up. So It's going to be ticklish for the Bears to what they do. Will they run the risk of trading Justin Fields when they don't necessarily know what they're going to do based on how the medicals turn out? I guess the consolation prize, if they decide not to take Caleb Williams, would be Jayden Daniels. That wouldn't be the worst thing. And who knows? Maybe somebody's thinking along the same lines of Tim Hasselbeck that Drake Maye is the best quarterback in the draft. The ball of confusion that goes at this time every year, and really exaggerated this year because of the 3 quarterbacks at the top of the draft. Tony's coming up next. I'll see you back here tomorrow morning at 9 a.m.